Massive changes have come to the Bricklink Designer Program in 2025, or have they? Over the past couple weeks, I'm sure you've seen many videos, including my own, speculating and sharing rumors about what they think is going on with the Bricklink Designer Program. Whether it's manipulating stock, LEGO reaching their fingers into Bricklink to make it what they want, or Bricklink just being in it for the money. But at Brickworld Chicago 2025, I had a discussion with Alex Kaselik, the Senior Program Manager over at the Bricklink Designer Program, and learned a lot more about what was going on behind the scenes, and I thought it would be amazing to record this video for you all to share what I have learned. But if there's something I may have missed, something you might have questions or want to know more about, definitely drop a comment and I will follow up and see if there's more that we can learn that you're curious about. So Alex, there's seemingly a lot of changes this year with the Bricklink Designer Program, a lot of speculation, a lot of fans giving their thoughts on changes, speculations on changes. The first, I think, and maybe the one that's made the biggest splash is with the recent Series 5 pre-orders, quantities, stock changing, the maximum sellouts changing. What really is that change all about? From your perspective, how has it gone?
I think you hit it right on the head, is that there have been a lot of changes this year, but that's because people are providing their feedback and letting us know what they want. Right. So this is a fan program and a fan design program from the beginning. So with the change to Series 5 pre-orders right now, or that just closed, the number one feedback that we were getting is that a lot of people were missing out on sets, and how bummed they were that they were missing out on sets. So, we had kind of two things in mind when we looked at this, to say, what could we do to make sure that the fans that are following along for a year, that are invested and want these sets, let's make sure that they can get them. There's the two things that we were looking for, and that was, one, how do we make sure we have a commitment to the fan designers that we will produce up to 30,000 of each set, and that we have our production slot. Essentially, our production slots is scheduled 2+ years out, essentially, to fit kind of the wheels that are in motion for manufacturing a supply chain of the LEGO group. So we can't just go out and just say, oh, we want more time. That's just not possible. So we say, okay, well, what can we do to best use that time that we do have available? First, like I said, we make sure we're giving each of the fan designers a level playing field, starting it out at 30. And then, as you see, just adapting in real time to see what demand we are seeing and what models those are. Because as much as we try to forecast what demand is going to be, it can really be kind of all over the place. I mean, for this series, the models that we thought would sell well, maybe underperformed a little bit, and the models that we thought, oh, okay, well, this might do, more towards the middle of the pack, did really well. What we end up seeing is okay, well, let's, we'll track sales in the first few hours and see where things are going, and then just adjust accordingly. So as we say, okay, well, based on demand, it doesn't look like this is going to hit 30,000. We're still going to market everything. We're still going to give everything the fair chance, but it's looking more like, oh, this might trend towards 20,000. So on the safe side, we say, okay, well, maybe we'll take 5,000 from this model that's trending towards 20, and then add that to something else that is getting close to selling out. So a side effect of that is, the progress bars that are built for 30,000, you see some kind of a little bit of things jumping around a little bit as we're adjusting them. But yeah, that's so fully we see, okay, well, let's add those 5,000 over there. Maybe there's another model that's kind of in a similar boat. We'll take that other 5,000, and then boom, okay. That's why you see something like Adventure in Transylvania. All of a sudden now it's 30 to 40,000. It's like, because we know based off of the first few hours now, okay, we can move some of those comfortably over, and not shortchange a fan designer on another model, right? Because that's exactly. Again, we still want to make sure that we're giving them their fair shake too. So it seems a little, it was a little kind of jerky, or, it does seem like, okay, it's, things are kind of bumping around what's going on. We couldn't, it was one of the things where we did message it ahead of time that we were doing this, but we thought maybe it would only be a handful, a couple thousand here or there from one model to another. We thought, all these models were going to do really well this series based on the feedback that we were getting from the fan community, and just the general interest and comments and that kind of thing on the post. So we didn't want to come out and say, oh, it's going to be X amount, because if it never was X amount, then you're going to have people that are pissed off about that too. So it's trying to find what's the best way to do that. And again, this is a pilot. We were just trying to see what could we do and how would this work. But in general, I think it turned out really well. I mean, overall, so far, the feedback has been pretty positive in the sense that we had all 5 models all the way through the end of crowdfunding. Historically, a couple models are not available after the first few hours.
Going back to the allocation, of course, you mentioned each series gets 150,000 units, 30,000 each is kind of the starting point. Is there a true sold out marker for any of these sets then, or could they theoretically keep shipping away? Let's say one model just keeps hitting the barrier that goes to the next, and the other ones are staying around 10,000.
So okay,
or would you cap it at 50,000 per se?
It would most likely be in and around that area, just because of if you look at like the distribution of sales across all of the series so far, generally you have a couple models that historically would have sold out in the 30,000 capacity standpoint. Yep. And then you have something in the low 20s, maybe it's in the mid 20s. And then there's usually a model or two that are in the 10 to 15 range. The 10 to 15 range, like that's what I would expect is normal performance of a BDP set per se. That's going back to like rounds 1 through 3. That's past selling out. We went from 10 to 30 to make it so that it was even, so that people could still get their hands on them. And now we're blowing past 30. So, fandom has grown that much. I think that's the one thing that we kind of forget, is that the Lego community, the fan community, has grown so much, and since the early 1920 timeframe. Transylvania is under 50 right now. So, and that was the highest voted set, the most hyped set we've had. So I think that kind of shows that's pretty much a ceiling. We don't know Castle because it's not a true Castle set per se. A very large built-in existing fan base with Castle. So, it definitely performs at a different level and different capacity than most other themes or kind of categories. But yeah. It would still, we wouldn't just let something run. We would have to make sure that everything else is getting it. Like, again, it's still getting this fair shake. So we're not going to cannibalize other sets just for the benefit of one set. That's also not fair. We have to be fair to all of our fan designers and to all the models and give them their fair shake. It's just, there could be potentially where, if all the models did really well, then you wouldn't sell any extra, right? So we would, that's a possibility. So it makes it really hard to say, okay, well, this is how many exactly extra there are going to be. If we were to do this again, I think the community would then kind of see like, okay, this is how it generally shakes out, in the sense of, you look at the sales over the first couple hours, we're doing the same thing and we're just adjusting in real time. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure everything's available as long as it could be. That's in the best interest of all parties, the fan community, the fan designers, and for the Lego group. We also have to make sure that everyone is being treated equally as well. So.
Yeah. And you mentioned a little bit the purchase window. Historically, it was around, I think, 29 days. This time it was shrunk down to about 14 to 15 days. Was there a reason for that, for shrinking that down to a smaller period?
Yeah, and it's all due to the flexible nature of this, the demand, or I should say the availability of production. So, we're already throwing enough wrenches in the wheels of production with this as it is. I mean, most of the time for, BDP is kind of lightning fast in the development of a set, from going from, it's a year and 5 months, and to then at the last minute say, oh, okay, well, you thought you were going to make 30,000 of these, now you're going to make 50,000. We don't really do that. So we thought, well, the plan was we'll shorten this production window just to give them as much time as possible as a heads up. We know, based on looking at 4 series previous to this, we know majority of the sales happen day one. It's 80, 90% somewhere in there. And then most of the sales in between, as you're whether you're day 2 to day 30, those sales just kind of middle along, and then you have a sales spike again in the last 24 hours, basically. We know we can go a little bit shorter. This isn't going to have a major effect, but what it really does is it helps us on the manufacturing side, gives our manufacturing teams a little bit more flexibility, as they're going to have to change some of their forecasts per se as to how much they're going to have to manufacture.
In the comments of a couple of my videos, specifically the video where I first speculated about this, there were a handful that were relatively top comments that were concerned about this test run, if you will, ruining the limited nature of the series, and basically saying now, well, we're just going to make as many sets as people will buy is how much we'll make. Therefore, it's not a collector, or it's not limited. Is there anything that you would say to them, or what kind of are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's limited in the sense that it's only available for 14 days or,
Yep.
whatnot. But then also, I guess to that argument, really, there's only, I mean, two of the sets this series you could say weren't limited. The other ones are still at the same production level that they would have
Yeah.
been regardless of anything changing. So sure, Adventure in Transylvania is at a higher production level than it would have been in the past, but the limited nature, to us, that's not what we're here to
Yeah.
do. We're here to make sure that fans are happy, and we're giving fans what they want. If you're buying it just because it's limited, that is not, it's 30,000 sets, or now it's gonna be 50,000 or more. So that's probably not the way to be looking at it.
And kind of to that thought, a lot of people previously would use this as an investment strategy, and some people think even so that the investors are propping up the purchases and the orders. What the orders look like that would maybe lead you to believe that that's truly not the case?
It's definitely not the case. I think I mentioned this earlier, that the fan community has grown so much in the last few years. Anyway, we can look back and see, sales data and how things were going from an order standpoint, and we know a majority. I mean, it's like 80-90% of orders are people buying one set, or two unique sets type of thing, like you're buying a Parisian Street and a Snack Shack type of thing.
Yep.
Almost all orders are that way. If you were trying to do something sneaky with it and just ordering to a bunch of different addresses, that's the least efficient way to do it. So it's just, no, there's a lot of fans that are purchasing sets. So scalping is something that is it's really not even on our radar. We don't see it as an issue. The sales data just doesn't back that up. Now there are some people that do, but it is such a small minority of, it's 30,000 sets. That's a lot of sets. You still need 15,000 people to be buying two sets. Like, that's a lot. That's still a lot of sets.
Exactly. If you and your team choose to do this again on the next series, or if you see there's a series with a highly anticipated set, would you do anything different? Would you change anything? I know some people have asked for more transparency on the order quantity, and I very much understand why you wouldn't just throw all this information out there. That's very private and confidential sales data. But is there anything you would change with how that's, whether it's communicated or on the day of, how it's seen, how it's visible?
There definitely needs to be a few changes, but I do think that there is just some general understandings that the fan community will then, kind of be able to extrapolate from how this last series is run. This has just ended, so we still kind of have to go through and do our after action and make sure we didn't break too many things in other areas that we just don't know about, or we still have to go and manufacture sets, and so we have to see, like, how does that actually go? Did everything go right? So that's going to take a couple months to figure out. Let's see how everything truly went, not rather than just here's how we think it went. I don't know how much we can change, and then obviously then you have to have the turnaround time of developing assets and resources for the website and all of that. Can't come out and say, oh, this is exactly what we're going to do, because we just don't know yet. Obviously we want it to be transparent, but again, that's why we're having conversations like this, where we were out at Brick World talking to a lot of people, kind of trying to talk through this, because it is. I mean, I understand it is a little bit confusing, but it was also going to be, kind of confusing for us. It was going to be confusing no matter how we messaged it, right? Yeah. We were committing one way or the other, and we didn't really want to commit to anything because we didn't know how it was going to go. So that's kind of the limited aspect there, the limited quantity nature of it.
So switching gears to some series, we'll talk about some Series 7. I don't even want to call it controversy, because we've talked about this a lot. It's not controversy, but from the fans' perspective, some would say, how did these sets get selected? And I think namely, we talked about the Walt robot was selected, and then the Antique Collection, and then not maybe, as maybe some castle fans would say, a true castle. I mean, without literally just showing us the data, of course. Is there anything you can tell us about that series in specific to maybe say, well, that these are truly the sets that were voted for, and there's no funny business going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, no, the way that it breaks out is that You look at something like Fortuna being, it's 4,000 part set. The 4,000 part set's usually the highest voted set.
Yep.
There are rare occasions where, the 4,000 part set is not the highest voted. That would be like Art of Chocolate type of model. We go through and we'll say, okay, here's the highest voted set. Okay, so if you take Fortuna, that's the highest voted set, it's 4,000. Okay, well, it's Pirate, so that takes everything Pirate below it, is now off the list essentially. And then you work your way down and we see, okay, well, the next couple 4,000 part sets are, if they're Castle, well, we got to go down our list and find, okay, what's the highest voted smallest set? Well, it's going to be Walt. And it's, I think people are they're kind of confused by Walt in a sense because it's not the average set, but it is a very cute set and it has broad appeal. And it's something very different that has been selected. And so it's like, okay, that's it. That's the set, right? So, we also have to have backup sets, right, too, because we have to go through and test build things and then also make sure that everything is compliant with all the Lego group standards and things that are coming. And so it's, there's a couple different ways that that can shake out too. You could have bad luck in the sense of, oh, there's instability, there's major instability in your model, and so something that was higher voted maybe wasn't available, or maybe you could have something where it's like, well, there's higher voted sets, but they're blocked by things that were higher voted than them. Right. So from a theming standpoint, usually the smallest sets historically have been sets that don't necessarily fit a category or are broad enough in the scope of the model. So example, Snack Shack or Camping Adventure, a larger set being chosen ahead of that wouldn't block that model. It's different enough per se. I think there's a lot that is read into the categories. Medieval Castle is really the only one that's like a hard fast category in the sense that we won't choose a medieval castle in another medieval set, and we kind of classify that based off of models that include faction torsos. For the most part. But you have things like sci-fi, fantasy, and space all together. And it's like, well, a sci-fi set and a space set could be potentially in the same series because they could be wildly different. So you would see Transylvania and being kind of more of like a Dracula style set and Mushroom Village in the same series. They're both fantasy sci-fi, right? But they're completely different models. So they're not going to block each other, right? So you always have to factor in, okay, well, we're going down the list. We're trying to build out the most robust group of 5. It's not just, oh, we like this set, so this is what's going to go forward, or this is unique, that's what's going to go forward. It's how do you build a list of 5 that are an average of 2,500 elements, different models or different themes, and then that builds it out. Sometimes the last set to be picked is a small set, sometimes it's the big set, sometimes it's usually almost always going to be a middle set, and it's typically a 1,000 2,600-ish part set is kind of like the last one that rounds everything out. And so for a lot of times what ends up happening is you have a 5th set has to be a specific part count to make the other ones work. So if it needs to be 1,200 parts, a 1,400 part set that could be higher voted than it, but the math doesn't work out, right? So it's like, okay, our average is too high for the series, and we use the part average as a way to estimate how much time it's going to take to work on all of these models, right? Okay. So that's how we can say, like, that's why it's such a important thing that we stick to in that range. Sometimes we have something where it's like, you'll see some series where they're lower, they're, high 2,300s, low 2,400s. And that's just because there was, we're getting down the list and it's like, there's nothing, we might need a 1,600 part set. And it's like, there's nothing between 1,600 and 2,000 parts, and you're coming down and down and down and down and down the list. And it's like, okay, we're getting too far down. We'll go back up and we'll just take a smaller set. And we'll just accept that it's lower. And then, in some series that gives us some more flexibility for creative decisions for the fan designers. Because of that, sometimes you get some weird scenarios that happen. But then the other thing is that, like, you have some really highly voted models that just don't fit the puzzle that we're trying to put together. Nice. And I think too, the other thing that we forget is what are the biggest complaints we get is it's all castle. Well, castle's really popular, right? Yeah. And then a non-castle sets get chosen, everyone's like, why didn't you choose castle sets? It's like, what? I don't,
Oh
can
man.
you win here?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
obviously there's always going to be a vocal minority that's saying, I didn't get what I wanted. And it's like, that's kind of a good thing, right? In the sense that like the fan community is self-regulating. If you look at Castle, like Castle always does very well in voting, and it's a good chunk of submissions, in the sense that it's usually around 30%. But it hasn't been selected as a finalist in every series, because there have been other things that have kind of just pushed its way ahead, in a sense where, like Series 5, you can debate if Transylvania is a castle set or not. It's not. It's a Dracula mansion. It is not a castle. It's a very poor castle, if that's supposed to be a castle. If that's the highest voted set we've ever had. And then you have Tortuga right on its heels. You also, a lot of the highly voted castle sets are those large part counts, and then those
Yep.
get blocked. And then you have Mushroom Village right there, also very high in voting. Now all the really high voted castle stuff is all basically blocked, and is not available to be used. And I think something too that we get a lot of questions about is comments, and that's like the comments that are on models on the product pages. Those are there for engagement for the fan community, to provide feedback to the fan designers, the social community aspect of it, but we don't take any that does not factor into the voting weight at all.
Speaking to Lego's relationship with Bricklink, speaking of speculation as well, seen a lot of speculation that Lego is dipping their fingers into how Bricklink does things, their operations, and maybe pushing Bricklink to make more of these series or switch things like the allocation we've seen. Are they really directing any of those kind of changes?
No, it's yeah, there hasn't really been anything. It's just, here, what can we do to improve, what we're seeing. That's kind of the nice thing, is we can we're still small, we're a very
Mm-hmm.
small team.
Yeah.
The BDP team there's 6 of us. It's very small, especially by the normal standards of a core portfolio type product. But no, we don't have it. There's very little where they're, the Lego group as a whole is interjecting, and that's kind of on purpose, in a sense, is that, we're smaller, we're a little bit more nimble, and we can kind of test and go and find things out, right? So yeah, there's like I don't want to say we're an incubator, but it's we are still we are Lego employees through and through.
Yeah.
But there's no, here, you must go do this and do that, and that doesn't exist really anywhere within Bricklink. We're slowly, integrating and coming closer and closer to the Lego group from a physical presence standpoint, in the sense of like the website and the way things are replatforming is going. But other than that, that's just for quality of life improvement, to modernize the very ancient website that we are operating. Yeah. We're definitely small in the sense of, from a sales perspective, but we are providing the place for the fan community, the really passionate fans, and the high affinity fans, to engage, and that's valuable. I don't think there's anything to worry about from that perspective. It's a lot of fun, I mean, it's too, there are a lot of fans within the Lego group as well, and so this is a very exciting program, and and even internally, people are excited to follow along with it and help support us and find ways that we can get better. So if anything, it's kind of the opposite direction of what we're talking about, is it's like ways that Bricklink is kind of integrating into the Lego group, in a sense, because we have a lot of fans internally too that want to help us out and help support us and support the fan designers and the program that's being run.
What's the best way for fans to have their voice heard, reach out directly to you and your team, and see some of these changes that they want to see in the program? What's the best way for them to make that known?
Probably the easiest way for us to see those comments, I always say the forum, the studio forum in the BDP section of the studio forum. That's just easiest, because we're there communicating in and out, all day, every day type of thing. And then off of that is, if you're on social media, that kind of thing, we're seeing it. We see comment. I mean, we're fans too. So I mean, we're consuming content, and we're seeing all the same things that everyone else is seeing. So, if there's comments out there, we're seeing it, regardless of where it may be. we're paying attention. I mean, we want to. It makes our job easier in the sense if we're reading and you're telling us what you would like, then we don't have to guess, right? So we can try things out, and they may not work, or they may be a little bit different than what you would hope they were, but we're still going to try things and want to continue to develop.
So you're saying you and your team might be lurking in the comments of some of these videos for people watching and leaving comments? They might see some of your comments. You never know.
Yeah, no, it's a tricky one because obviously we don't want to go out and just start engaging randomly.
Oh yeah,
But no,
yeah.
we have a lot of. I mean, there's a lot of different content creators that we personally follow and those kind of things, or
Nice.
that we're working with. We're going to see, for example, the fan media reviews. If they're reviewing our models, we're watching those, and then we're reading the comments and seeing how things are being received. And so, and there's different blog websites that it's like the comments, so it's a lot of fun seeing how people are engaging with the product, and then too, just the warm kind of reception to the fan designers too, because I think this is something that kind of falls by the wayside, is that these are fan designed models, right? And there are fans who have designed these sets, and kind of the warmth and camaraderie that exists, with people cheering each other on and congratulating each other. That's a lot of fun too. So it's not just us going and getting feedback. It's also like, it's good. It feels good to see, exactly, the job well done that the fan designers are doing.
No, it's great to connect with you on this, to shed light on the process, more light on the program, and what's really going on behind the scenes, and the intentions of you and the team. It's just great to get this information. I hope that some people learned a lot from this discussion here today. So thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you. No, thank you for hosting me today, and for all that you do for the fan community. We really appreciate it.